Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to check out the solo Magicka Necromancer PvE build for the Greymoor chapter. You will be able to solo overland, public dungeons, world bosses, 4-man group dungeons on normal, and if you're experienced enough, even on veteran mode. If you want the written guide, it's all on the website, link in the description below, and please don't forget to subscribe. So let's take a look at the stats of this character. I want to once emphasize again that I would recommend to have around 18 to 19,000 health. This is always very important. Stamina, same thing. On a character, on a solo build, you will have to dodge roll a lot and block. In a group, usually the tank soaks up most of the damage, but when you're playing alone, you can't really do that, so it's important to have enough stamina. Because when you dodge roll, you can prevent one-shots, which is like insane damage that usually would hit you in the face. It's gonna do 0 damage. Which is really nice, believe it or not. You will notice that we don't have a lot of Magicka recovery with this setup. It doesn't really matter that much because we're using False God. If you need more recovery, you could always run Witchmother's Potent Brew. I will get into that more in a second. Other than that, we have pretty decent spell damage and pretty high spell crit. Looking at the Mundostone, I always pick the lever just to get extra spell penetration, just more damage. More damage is always nice. So now my primary buff food is Bewitched Sugar Skulls. There is also, like, you can buy this in the store. You could also buy the slightly cheaper version, which is like long thin pasty with melon. It's all on the website. Also, like how you need to, or how do you can craft the potions and stuff like that. That's one option, but if you feel like your sustain is low, you can always go with the Witchmother's Potent Brew. I usually do it like this. The tier 1 setup has this one, and then the tier 2 and the beginner setup run around with the Witchmother's Potent Brew. I also explained this on the website. Buff food is very important. Never play without buff food, because they give you such a huge increase in the stats. It's basically a must-have. Then we have Essence of Spell Power. They're very expensive, so as a new player you could just use the normal Magicka potions, but I want to explain why these are so good. So you get Major Sorcery, 20% extra spell damage, Major Prophecy, which is 10% extra spell critical. It's a weird number there, I don't know why they're not changing this, but it's 10% extra spell crit basically. And you get Major Intellect, 20% more Magicka recovery, and 7,582 Magicka on a button press. Same thing here, right? Just without the Major Sorcery or Prophecy. If you just want to use these, I can recommend running Inner Light and Degeneration. Because Inner Light provides you with Major Prophecy, and Degeneration provides you with Major Sorcery. So that's another source where you can get these ones. Because the potions, like I mentioned, they're very expensive. Another point in crafting alchemy, you need medicinal use. You have to level that on all your characters. It's so strong. 30% longer potion duration. Takes like 15 minutes to level up. I have a guide on the website in the crafting section. So usually your potions last, I think, 30 to 33 seconds, but with that passive from the alchemy, they will last 47 seconds. And the potion cooldown is 45 seconds. That means you can get 100% uptime on these buffs. That's why they're so powerful. Well, that's very important. I also have a specific guide talking about buff food and potions, just to explain it a little bit more in depth. Because I see a lot of people running around either with the wrong buff food or like not a buff food at all. And I'm like, what's going on? Why? Let's take a look at the race real quick. All Magicka based races work. I usually pick High Elf or Breton. Breton if you want a little bit more sustain, High Elf if you want a little bit more damage. Because you get 2k max Magicka and 258 spell damage. Breton also has 2k max Magicka, but he has another 7% spell cost reduction on top. So in the end, you need to decide for yourself. Breton or High Elf or like any Magicka based set race works. I usually just pick High Elf or Breton because I like them the most. Should it be a vampire with this setup? I do not recommend it, no. You can try to build around it, but I don't think it's worth it with this specific setup. Let's take a look at the gear setup. So this here is the tier 1, basically the best in slot setup that you can use. On the website I also have tier 2 and a beginner setup, which is very easy to get. I want to explain why I like this setup in particular so much. False God. There's a perfected and imperfected version. You can get the imperfect version from normal mode Sunspire, very easy to get. And all you lose is 1 extra Magicka bonus. That's literally all you lose. So now, why is this so good? You get the spell crit, then you gain Minor Slayer, increases your damage done against dungeon, trial and arena monsters by 5%. You get the spell crit, bonus again, and spell damage, and if you have the perfect version, another max Magicka bonus, and then reduces the cost of your Magicka abilities by 8%. When an enemy you recently damaged dies, you restore 2150 Magicka and gain Major Expedition for 8 seconds, increasing your movement speed by 30%. That's why we don't really need a lot of Magicka recovery on this tier 1 setup. On the tier 2 setup, we don't have this one. We run, for example, Julianos. That's why I say on the tier 2 and the beginner setup you want to run the Witch Mothers. Because it will actually, like the buff food will include Magicka recovery. That's the reason. It's pretty much the best Magicka set for like any activity. Whether you play solo, dungeon, trials, like everywhere. Because it's just, it's so good. And it's very easy to get if you have the DLC. The second set, like always, Mother Sorrow. You can get this from Overland in Deshan or buy it in the guild stores. If you buy blue quality jewelry, like you don't need to gold it out. The difference between gold, purple and blue with arcane trait is almost 0, like 1-2%. It doesn't matter. Because you can still have the same spell damage enchantments. If you have a blue jewelry, you will still get 174 spell damage if you have a spell damage enchantment on here. And blue Mother Sorrow jewelry in the guild store, very cheap. Maybe 10k in total when you get all 3. Lightning Staff of Mother Sorrow can be obtained through a quest. I made a video about it recently, I will also link it in the description. It's very easy to get, it's like a 5-minute, 10-minute quest and then you will get it for free, it's really nice. That's the second set and the crit is just really juicy. I'm a fanboy of like just high crit in general, so it really fits. And there's nothing really better out there. Everybody's using this set. Back bar, Maelstrom Lightning Staff. Make sure it's infused with a weapon damage enchant, that way. Like, if you weapon swap and you're on the front bar, your weapon damage enchantment will keep proccing, so you have 100% uptime. And 452 extra spell damage is a lot. Just for free, basically. You can get the Maelstrom stuff in normal Maelstrom Arena. If you want the perfect version, you can do it in Veteran, but there is no difference between perfect and imperfect because we run it on the back bar, so the 1 piece extra bonus you get from the perfect version is not active anyway, so it doesn't matter. Just go in Maelstrom Arena, normal mode, and you will get it. This one. Very nice and easy to obtain. That's this, and then the last set is Ice Heart. I like this because first off you get the spell crit, and then when you deal critical damage you have a 20% chance to gain a damage shield that absorbs 5000 damage for 6 seconds. While the damage shield holds, you deal a little bit of frost damage. So the nice thing about this is because it applies a shield. 5000, it doesn't sound like that much, but the cool thing is because we have so much critical damage, when we apply like AoE and something like that, it will proc pretty soon. There we go. And it's a 5k shield. That doesn't sound like a lot. And technically, you could use another set if you want. But like sometimes when I'm dealing damage, I forget to reapply my harness Magicka shield. So then it's actually nice when this goes off. So it just absorbs a lot of damage. That's why I usually prefer this. It saved my life countless of times, like when I get stunned and I didn't expect it. This might activate and you will just get a free shield that bolsters your health. Very nice. That's this. Once again, you could swap out False God with Julianos if you don't have it, but if you have access to Sunspire normal mode, you can just, it's so easy to get. All divines like always. 5 light pieces, 1 medium, 1 heavy, and all max magic enchantments. Here we have arcane trade with full spell damage. If you want to run Bloodthirsty, go for it. Then the lightning stuff. With a Nirnhound shock enchant, the reason why we run lightning staves is just because we can proc off balance, and heavy attacks restore a lot of resources. Every time you do a heavy attack, you get like 3000 Magicka back. And when you actually do a heavy attack on an off balanced enemy, you get twice the amount of resources back, so around 6000. That's a lot. Very easy way to increase your sustain. That's why we run shock staves. Plus, we have a lot of AoE abilities like this one and the blast bones plus hungry scythe. Because shock staves also increase your AoE damage by 8%. So it's really handy. I run a Nirnhound on this one because Necromancers have a special passive which will bump up their spell crit in execute. You could run precise, but Nirnhound or like sharpened will do more than just fine. Backbar infused with weapon damage. So that's the gear setup. Champion points on the website. You can also find 300 CP and 600 CP. We have 44 in Thaumaturge, 73 Master at Arms, 64 Elemental Experts, 66 Elfborn, 23 Spell Erosion, 61 Tumbling. This is very important because once again, you gotta learn to dodge roll when there is like hard hitting abilities incoming. So you can avoid all the damage. Really easy. Shadow Wars 61 points to get block cost reduction. Can also be nice. 100 points into Arcanist. That's to bump up our Magicka recovery a little bit. If you want, you can put some points into Tenacity. Totally up to you. 11 Sprinter and 37 Warlord. And here we have nothing. 49, 49, 48 to mitigate a lot of damage, and then 43, 81. It's a pretty general setup. You can play around here if you want to. Looking at passives and skills, the Necromancer has a lot of really juicy passives. First off, we have reusable parts. So when we activate Blastbone, Skeletal Mage, or Spirit Mender and it dies, the cost of your next Blastbones, Skeletal Mage or Spirit Mender is reduced by 50%. Right now I have the buff active here, and this one only costs 1100. That's super cheap. Really nice. Death Knell increases your critical strike chance against enemies under 25% health by 10% for each Gravelord ability slotted. So we have 1, 2, 3 at the moment. And when we're buffed up, we're at 66.7. So we're at 96% critical in execute. Basically 100%, so we will always crit. Very powerful. Dismember. While a Gravelord ability is active, your spell and physical penetration are increased by 1500. So that's like Skeletal Arcanist. We have this up all the time, so we will always benefit from this passive. Rapid Rot increases your damage done with damage over time effects by 15%. Just like this. Really nice. Then, this one doesn't really... I mean, whenever an enemy you are in combat with dies within 28 meters of you, restore 20 Magicka and Stamina. So, it's when you have a Bone Tyrant ability slotted. In our case, it's this one. So it can be nice to have. Disdain Harm reduces the damage you take from damage over time abilities by 15%, while you have a Bone Tyrant ability active. We don't really have it active unless we just like instant cast it, unless we use the Ravenous Goliath This one, health average, doesn't really matter, but Last Gasp increases your max health by 1250. So we can pump all our attribute points into Magicka, we don't need anything here, and still reach 18.7k. Really nice freebie. And we have Living Death. While you have a negative effect on you, your healing done is increased by 8%. That's nice. Okay, while you have a Living Death ability slotted, your critical strike chance with all healing abilities is increased by up to 20%. I guess it's nice to have, because we have the ghost here, but not really something groundbreaking. Corpse consumption is pretty nice. When you use an ability on a corpse, you generate 10 ultimate. So for us, when I use my Blast Bones, then I can use my AoE Mystic Siphon. So that will actually activate. Undead Confederate. While you have a Blast Bone, Skeletal Mage, or Spirit Mender active, your magic and stamina recovery is increased by 200. So we have the Mage up and the Guard, like the Spirit Guardian. They're always up when we're fighting. So these 200 will always be active. When I activate my potion, we almost jump to 1100. With the Witch Mothers, it would go... I can show you real quick. It's almost at 1600. There we go. That's really nice. There's just overall, there's a lot of good passives. Destruction stuff. When you kill an enemy with the destruction stuff ability, you restore 3600. I'm not 100% sure, but I think heavy attacks also count towards it. Now here, equipping a lightning stuff increases your damage done with area effect abilities by 8%. So all our AoE abilities, Blast Bones, the Scythe, and the Blockade, and the Mystic Siphon will benefit from this, dealing more damage. Other than that, yeah, maybe here. Shock stuff, heavy attacks damage nearby enemies for 100% of the damage done. So whenever we do heavy attacks, it will have splash damage, which is also nice. So basically we deal AoE damage, and we also restore resources every time we do a heavy attack. Light armor. You want all of these passives, because first off, like this year, you could debate that you don't really need it, but still. Like snare reduction reduces the effectiveness of snares applied to you by like 20%, and sprinting will become a little bit cheaper. Increases your magic recovery by 4% for each piece of light armor, so it's 20% because we have 5 pieces. It also reduces the Magicka cost of your abilities by 2% for each piece, so we have 10%. Very powerful. A little bit of extra spell resistance, a lot of extra spell critical, that's 10% just for free basically. And almost 5000 spell penetration. That's a lot of extra damage, that's crazy. I recommend people, because we have one heavy armor piece, make sure to get Juggernaut to gain another 2% max health. You could also get Constitution and Resolve just to increase your sustain a tiny bit and a little bit more resistances. But the Juggernaut one is the more important, because 2% extra health is nice. Soul Magic, the passives don't really matter, but we use Consuming Trap. Because, well, it restores almost 8000 Magicka. We'll talk about that in a second. Fighter's Guild, you want to still level it up, because this here, Banish the Wicked, you generate 9 ultimate when you kill an undead, Daedra or Werewolf. This is really nice. Mage's Guild, if you're not using the spell power potions, like I mentioned before, you probably want to slot Inner Light and Degeneration to get the extra stats, like Major Sorcery and Major Prophecy. Psijic, you don't really need it. Undaunted is a nice to have. This increases your max health, stamina, magic by 2% per type of armor. So we have 5 light, 1 heavy, 1 medium. That's 3 different types. So it gives us 6% overall more max resources. All the racial passives like always, and the medicinal use because of the potion stuff. So let's take a look at the skills that I'm using and why I am using them. Because some might not look that familiar. Harness Magicka is a no-brainer. It's basically a 9,000, it gives you 9,000 health, aka like shield. So when the enemy hits you, it will first hit the shield and then take away health. So if you're taking a lot of damage, you can always activate this. And sometimes Ice Heart will also proc, so get another 5k shield for free. On top of that, the second text there, while active, whenever the shield absorbs damage, you restore 500 Magicka. Each piece of light armor worn increases the Magicka restore by 33%. The Blast Bones, this is your strongest AoE and single target ability. Once it explodes, make sure to reuse it. You always have to play around the Blast Bones, because it's just so powerful. And it's also, it barely costs anything. Ricochet Skull. Your single target ability, and every third cast of this ability deals 20% increased damage and will bounce up to 2 times to other nearby enemies. It also has a nice small AoE effect. It has a little bit of long travel time. But yeah, it's really strong. If you want, you could use like Force Pools, for example, or the Suchik one, the elemental weapon, if you really want to. Hungry Scythe. So that's here because it's AoE damage, and also you heal for 2,800 health for the first enemy hit and an additional 935 for each additional enemy, up to 5 times. After dealing damage, you heal for 374 health every 1 second over 5 seconds. It's not a super strong heal, but still pretty decent. When you're basically hitting several enemies with this, you're not gonna die because your health will constantly be refilled. Like I mentioned before, you could use Boneyard here instead of Hungry Scythe if you feel like, oh, I already have enough healing, so I can actually use more AoE damage. Now, one of the most important abilities, Spirit Guardian. Conjure a ghostly spirit to do your bidding and stay by your side for 16 seconds. It has a very long duration. The spirit heals you or the lowest health ally around you every 2 seconds, restoring 3,877 health. So it's a lot of healing you get from this. On top of, while active, 10% of the damage you take is transferred to the spirit instead. This is a really nice like damage absorption summon, and it also constantly heals you. It's so nice. So you always have to make sure to keep this up. The ultimate crazy AoE damage. On the final smash, it also stuns the enemy, and it applies major vulnerability to the enemy for 8 seconds. So they take 30% more damage from all your attacks. That's a lot. That's pretty nice. If you're playing with a body, it will also help him to actually boost. The AoE is pretty big. On the back bar, we have like a failsafe ultimate Ravenous Goliath. You can use this one if you want to. You will transform into a Goliath. You will get 30k extra health, so you have, it's just so much. Also restores health. And while transformed, your damaging light attacks restore 374 health, and your fully charged heavy attack restore 935 health. You deal 1,500 magic damage to nearby enemies every second and heal for that amount. So there's an AoE around you, it drains health from the enemies, giving it to you. So you're not gonna die as long as this is up. Mystic Siphon is the damage over time tether I mentioned before. Deals nice damage and also restores a little bit of Magicka. Skeletal Arcanist deals damage, keeps up the where is it? Dismember passive and also Undead Confederate. That's why the 2 summons are always nice to have. They're very useful. Elemental Drain. Now this is a Destruction Staff ability. It doesn't cost anything, so you can apply it as much as you want. And the nice thing about this is in group content, usually the healer applies this debuff to the enemy. However, we don't have any healer because we're playing alone, so you need to use this ability. It debuffs the enemy with Major Breach. It reduces his resistance by 5280. That means you will deal a lot more extra damage. It also applies minor Magicka steal to the enemy. You will gain 300 Magicka every 1 second when you damage the enemy. That's a lot of extra Magicka that you get in return on top of the extra damage, and it doesn't cost anything. And what else do you want? Consuming Trap. Here, you don't necessarily need this. However, depending on what content you do, like in dungeons, I like to apply this on a low health target. Once the target dies, you can read the second text there. If an affected enemy dies, you fill an empty soul gem and heal for 3741. You also restore 7590 Magicka and 3000 stamina. I mean, we apply this on enemy, and the enemy dies, we get 7000 Magicka back, almost 8000. Like, what the hell? Maybe you don't need that much sustain, so you could replace this with another ability. For example, like the AoE damage ability Boneyard. If you have access to the Sigic Order, you could run Accelerate to gain minor force and stuff like that. A lot of options, so this is kind of your flex spot. Unstable Wall of Storms, like I mentioned before. AoE damage. It keeps up your weapon damage enchantment even when you're swapping to the front bar. It's always active. And it has a chance to set the enemy off balance. Very juicy. So you need to learn to always keep up your summons, your blockade, and your shield. Once that is taken care of, you can deal damage. Before I showcase the outfit, I just want to explain it once again. You need to learn when to dodge roll in the right moment. Because dodge roll, you can mitigate, like a one shot can become 0 damage, right? When you would usually die from a one shot, you can just dodge roll it and you get 0 damage. It's completely OP. Blocking also works. It's not as effective, but it will also help. So for me, when I go into a dungeon, I know most of the boss mechanics. So I know when I have to dodge roll or block. Or like shield up and block. As a new player, that might not be that obvious. But the more you play, the more obvious will it be. It will just get more obvious, because at some point, if you have done a boss fight for 10 times, 20 times, you will know the text of the boss. Keep up your summons, the blockade, the shield. Your most important things, just to boost your power overall. Make sure to use the right buff food. You can buy them in the store. There's a slightly cheaper version of this one. It's all on the website. If you want to know how to craft this, it's on the website as well. Make sure to have the right enchantments, like spell damage. However, if you lack sustain, you could use Magicka Recovery glyphs here as well. But usually you don't need it. And most important, don't forget, heavy attacks restore Magicka. And if you hit an off-balanced enemy with a heavy attack, it's twice as much. I can let me actually showcase this maybe really quick. Let's dump the Magicka and hope we get. Now I do a heavy attack. And it gives me Magicka back every time I hit him. That's one nice way to actually restore that. And a lot of people don't know that because the game doesn't really tell you. Like I always say, play around with the build. It's not set in stone. This should function as a base, and just I explain how it works. I have a few dungeon runs of different solo builds. You can always check them out. The outfit that I'm running this here is just Ice Heart. Then we have Sapphire Gloves, Sapphire Breeches, Sapphire Robe, Sunspire Sash, Sunspire Shoes. This here is Ancestral High Elf Stuff, and on the back we have the normal Maelstrom stuff. This here is all Frozen Blood die. Up here we have Frozen Blood, Hollow Fang. It's basically 2 Frozen Blood and a Hollow Fang Cruer. Frozen, Hollow Fang, Hollow Fang. Frozen, Frozen, Frozen. And we have Frozen, Hollow Fang, Hollow Fang. Frozen, Hollow, and Frozen. It's a little bit confusing because it basically looks the same. Frozen, but here it's different. Frozen, Hollow Fang, and Frozen once again. Kinda hilarious. If you have any questions about the stuff, you can either join our community Discord or ask me on twitch.tv/alcasthq. I'm usually there to answer questions when I'm live and not busy raiding. Other than that, you can always ask in the comment section here below. Someone usually always helps. And if you want to watch a few other videos, you can do that right here. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe and hit that juicy like button. See you soon. Cheers.